I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
After nearly a decade of blood, sweat and tears, Alien was released to academic, public and commercial acclaim. While critics were initially mixed with the film, they were quickly overruled by the swarm of eager moviegoers desperate to see the groundbreaking cinematic blockbuster. Alien stood alongside the giants of 70s cinema, inevitably raising excitement for the sequel. Fox did not want to make a sequel to Alien. After its surprising success, Brandywine Productions were fully intent on developing Alien 2. Unfortunately, the chances of a sequel were diminished when 20th Century Fox switched presidents in 1979. Alan Ladd Jr. was replaced by Norman Levy, who was not interested in the idea of a sequel. Levy saw Alien as lightning in a bottle and believed that a sequel would be too expensive to produce. The project was stalled indefinitely.
And finally there was another change of management and another new group that came in. And one of them stopped me in the parking lot when he said, I knew him, said, you guys have been talking about Alien, he said, so what do you want to do? So I kind of told him the story that was a cross between Southern Comfort that Walter and I had made since and the Magnificent Seven that we were working on at the moment. And he said, great, that sounds fine. Good. So we then all had we all had a meeting, and we were on.
With Alien 2 off life support, David Giler was handed a script from his development executive for an in-development science fiction film. Written by young up-and-coming director James Cameron, the screenplay for The Terminator impressed Giler. During a creative meeting, the concept for an Alien sequel was brought up to Cameron by Giler and Walter Hill. Having loved the original Alien, and upon hearing Giler's vision Ripley and Soldiers, Cameron immediately began writing the Alien sequel.
Ridley Scott made this film that I think just stunned the world, and I was one of the people who was stunned by it when I saw it. And a few years later, when I became a filmmaker myself, I actually saw an opportunity when I was asked to write the second one I wanted to make a film like that. I was so impressed by the world that he created, the characters that he created, and the design. But I think that there are many accomplishments in that first film, and he really set the bar very high for science fiction in general.
A 45-page treatment titled Alien 2 was submitted by Cameron in under 3 days. While there are numerous differences between this treatment and the final film, the core structure and message remain. Fox executives, however, had a mixed reaction to the presentation, once more putting the film on hold. The hopes of a sequel were given a lifeline when a scheduling conflict arose with Terminator star Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was contractually obliged to film the sequel to Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer, subsequently delaying filming for The Terminator by 9 months. One film setback was another's lifeline, as Cameron suddenly had 9 free months to write a script for Alien 2. Cameron presented to Fox a 90-page unfinished script and a concept, describing his approach to the sequel as a combat film, more akin to a roller coaster than a haunted house. Cameron also reportedly presented the film's title by writing Alien on the whiteboard, then adding a $sign to the end of it. While the script was unfinished, Fox executives were very impressed by Cameron's pitch, enough to greenlight Aliens. However, Cameron stipulated that he wanted to do more than just write the script. He wanted to direct the film. Cameron was a young director, his only directing credit at the time being Piranha 2: The Spawning, a low-budget independent horror film. Naturally, the executives voiced their concerns, eventually agreeing to an ultimatum. Cameron's green light was under the condition that The Terminator must be a success. If not, Cameron would not be allowed to direct. Fortunately, The Terminator was more than just a success. It was a phenomenon.
I'll be back.
Outperforming every expectation, the film's success launched Cameron's career, solidified Schwarzenegger's status as a leading man, and led to a major franchise that remained in the pop culture zeitgeist. Following the unlikely success of The Terminator, Cameron and then partner/producer Gail Ann Hurd were given the approval to direct and produce the sequel to Alien, scheduled for a 1986 release with a budget of $17 to $18 million. Cameron finished the script in February 1985. His aim was to treat the film as a sequel, not as a remake.
the fans of the first film are so powerful in their, I mean, they're so entrenched in the vision that Ridley created for that film, that to do a clone of it or to take one sort of small baby step away from it would not do. So what I've tried to do is take what I personally was interested in from that film, certain aspects of the alien's life cycle that interested me, the Ripley character, which interested me greatly because of the fact that it's a strong female character and that sort of thing, and brought into it a whole other area of science fiction that I've also always wanted to see realized, which is the idea of the military in the future.
Alien's concept art was headed by Sid Mead and Ron Cobb. Both came into the project with a wealth of experience between them. Mead had previously worked on feature films such as Star Trek The Motion Picture, Blade Runner and Tron, while Cobb had worked on Star Wars and Alien. The work between the two was divided. Mead primarily dealt with the military designs, such as the Sulaco starship and the dropship, while Cobb worked on the designs of the human colony. Both artists were asked by Cameron to incorporate acknowledgements of the Vietnam War in their designs. H.R. Giger, who was so integral to the iconic designs for the original film, was not brought on for the sequel due to contractual obligations, much to his disappointment. Giger was replaced by special effects legend Stan Winston. Winston and Cameron were incredibly faithful to the visual effects from the original, making only minor tweaks, such as giving the chest burst the tiny arms.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
12 suits were created for the xenomorphs, with minor tweaks made to the costumes to provide the performers with additional mobility. The major design inclusion for the sequel came with creating the Xenomorph Queen. Cameron contributed heavily towards the designs, which he and Winston tested by building what they lovingly called the Garbage Bag Queen. Using a foam core mock-up with trash bags for skin, the crew suspended the Queen from a crane in the studio parking lot. While rudimentary, the test was a success, proving to Winston and Cameron that the idea could work. The final alien Queen puppet was over 4 meters or 14 feet tall and made from lightweight polyurethane foam. Because the head, neck, body, legs, face, lips, jaws and tongue all had to move independently, it took 16 operators as well as hydraulics and motors to make the Queen believable on screen. As pre-production continued, Cameron and Hearn turned to cast. Cameron had purposely stressed the importance of a female lead for Aliens, and seeing Sigourney Weaver's performance as Ripley in Alien, he made her an integral part of the sequel.
I was making a film in France, and I suddenly got this complete finished script that was all about Ripley and this little girl, and changed the nature somewhat of the aliens, and it was set to go. I mean, it was like, can you start in 3 months? And I remember thinking, I can't believe that no one even mentioned it to me. But I mean, I was thrilled. I met Jim Cameron shortly after that and loved working with him.
She came to it when it was visually and dramatically a fait accompli. So I have to give her a lot of credit for not rampaging through it and saying this won't work, that won't work. She approached it as, right, I see the direction you want to take. This is how my character would respond in that situation. So it was a dream for me as a writer. So I took her input on how she would react. She speaking as Ripley, I wouldn't do that, I would do this. Wouldn't I be a little more angry here or a little softer there, that sort of thing, and applied it all back into the rewrite.
Casting for Newt, the traumatized young girl, was proving difficult.
We found that the children who had a great deal of acting experience had mostly acted in commercials, and whenever they delivered a line, they'd smile at the end. And it was so inappropriate for this girl who's really suffering from traumatic stress.
Finally, the casting team discovered a young student named Carrie Henn, who had never even been in a school play. However, Cameron knew he'd found Newt.
Well, I was eating lunch, and Sarah Jackson, the casting director, was taking photos of all these young children. And she took my photo, and they had me try out for an audition.
Additional casting included Paul Reiser as Burke, Lance Henriksen as Bishop, Bill Paxton as Hudson, William Hope as Gorman, Al Matthews as Apone, Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez, Mark Rolson as Drake, and Michael Biehn as Hicks. Initially, the role of Hicks went to James Remar. Remar took part in all the pre-production preparation for the film and even began filming. However, after being arrested for drug possession, Remar was replaced by Michael Biehn on incredibly short notice. In preparation for the film, the actors playing the Colonial Marines were trained by the SAS for 2 weeks. The training had 2 purposes. It allowed the actors to learn how a military unit operates, and it also allowed the actors to bond. The actors were allowed to personalise their battle armour, giving their characters a stronger sense of identity. Weaver, Reiser and Hope did not participate in the 2-week program, as Cameron wanted to create a detachment between the Marines and the other actors. Principal photography began in 1985 at the Pinewood Studios and the decommissioned Action Lane Power Station in England. With only a 75-day schedule and no option to delay, the relationship between director and crew was turbulent. Cameron found it hard to work through the British film industry traditions, such as morning tea breaks.
Go on, have a cup of tea.
Thank you very much.
There you go. There you go.
Do you regret your comments, sir?
I want you to have a cup of tea.
Whereas the crew were dismissive towards Cameron due to his relative inexperience. As Terminator had not been released in England yet, Cameron organised a viewing of his film to the crew to show his credentials. None of the crew showed. On set, tensions became exacerbated due to Cameron's hands-on, intensive approach to filmmaking, often reconfiguring lighting and camera setups without consulting a crew. The situation boiled over early on in production, when cinematographer Dick Bush and first assistant director Derek Cracknell were fired for repeatedly ignoring Cameron and Heard's requests. In response, the English crew walked out in the middle of the shoot. As Cameron was unable to move the production out of England due to the amount of films in production at the time, he and Heard gathered the crew to come to a compromise. After a heated discussion, the crew agreed to support Cameron if he supported their scheduled working hours, to which Cameron agreed.
Look, first of all, the stagecraft and the craftsmanship in general that the English did for this movie was second to none. I mean, these guys are great craftsmen, and they take their work seriously. But I think the pace of the way the work is done is much more laid back. I mean, there's a tea break at 10 o'clock, and then there's a long lunch, and most of the crew end up going to the pub that's actually, can you imagine a studio lot here with a bar? Do they have those? I don't think so, and then you'd come back, and then you'd shoot for a few hours, and then you'd have a tea break at 4, and it just was a very kind of laid back, kind of traditional way of making a film. Nothing wrong with it. But there was a tremendous time constraint and budget constraints to make this movie, work. So Jim, was pressed to just squeeze every moment he could to get another shot.
At the end of production, Cameron told the crew, "This has been a long and difficult shoot, fraught by many problems, but the one thing that kept me going through it all was the certain knowledge that one day I would drive out of the gate of Pinewood and never come back, and that you sorry bastards will still be here." Despite the tensions, principal photography concluded in January 1986 on time and on budget. Fox refused to budge on the release date for Aliens, July 18, 1986. That gave Cameron barely enough time to prepare the film for audiences. The film's post-production finished only a week before the film's release. With no time to show the film to test audiences, only a studio screening was performed for Fox executives. The film was enthusiastically received by executives, and was released to wider audiences on Fox's intended release date of July 18, 1986. Aliens is rightfully regarded as one of the greatest sequels of all time. The film is just as good as its predecessor, with some even considering it to be better than the original. The inevitable problem Aliens had to tackle was its horror. The beauty of the original film came from the unknown horror of the derelict ship and the xenomorph. But now that the audience has seen both these elements, a lot of the horror of the unknown is lost. The way the film circumvents this issue is by focusing on the terror of the xenomorphs while creating bigger and more varied set pieces and bigger monsters. While this is the formula many sequels can't manage to crack, going bigger and better, Aliens manages to succeed. Expanding on the lore of the original without sacrificing the mystery or terror of the threat. The film also accomplished in expanding the character of Ripley, providing her closure from her trauma while also giving her someone to fight for. The overall experience is an intensely woven strand of sci-fi and action that leaves the audience breathless. Let's get started. Much like the original, Aliens opens rather ominously. The title sequence is foreboding and unsettling, with the addition of the martial drums indicating the Marines' inclusion into the story. The film then picks up right where the original left off, with Ripley and Stasis aboard the drifting escape shuttle. Well, not exactly where the original left off, as upon the escape shuttle's discovery, Ripley is awoken and informed by corporate hustler Burke that she has been adrift in space for 57 years. Upon hearing the news, Ripley suffers a PTSD episode where she is infected with a chestburster.
No!
This is the first indication that Ripley is suffering from extreme trauma, which makes complete sense considering the absolute hell she has just experienced. A few days later, Ripley is debriefed by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, the company that she and her team worked for and the same corporation that set them off course to LV-426. Her pleas are met with deaf ears, as the executives are skeptical about her crew's experience with Moon LV-426, while also questioning why Ripley blew up their ship with all their cargo. Weaver does a great job conveying Ripley's frustration towards her superiors. They refuse to believe her, insulting Ripley's trauma and casting her out. After the meeting, Ripley discovers why the executives are so skeptical, as the Moon has been the site for a terraforming colony over the last 20 years.
How many are there? How many colonists?
I don't know, 60, maybe 70 families.
I love the following shot of Ripley's hand, as it eerily resembles the body of a facehugger. The following wide shot also reveals just how broken she is as a person. The place is an absolute mess, with her stillness in the frame similar to her stillness in stasis. Her trauma has reduced her to this shattered shell of a human being. Sometime later, Burke and Lieutenant Gorman of the Colonial Marines Corps visit Ripley.
Hi, Ripley. This is Lieutenant Gorman of the Colonial Marine Corps.
The reason for the visit is due to the colony on LV-426. They've lost contact. Fearing the worst, Burke and Gorman aim to recruit Ripley as an advisor for the mission to the Moon. Extremely reluctant, Ripley is somewhat swayed when Burke mentions she'll be reinstated as a flight officer if she goes, and finally agrees after Burke promises that the xenomorphs will be destroyed, not captured. It's here where I have to give credit to Paul Reiser's performance as Burke. He's a fantastic villain, the kind of guy who would sell his own mother to climb the corporate ladder. He's manipulative, intelligent, and a complete weasel. This scene illustrates this to perfection.
I heard you're working in the cargo docks. I think it's great that you're keeping busy. And I know it's the only thing that you could get.
Travelling to LV-426 aboard the military ship the Sulaco, we meet the Colonial Marines and future victims asleep in stasis. In reality, only 4 sleeping pods could be built due to budget constraints. But rather than cutting the scene out entirely, Cameron and his crew use clever mirror tricks for the scene to work. Waking up, Cameron wastes no time showcasing his character's trait. There's Apone, the squad leader and experienced military man, the ambiguous Corporal Hicks, the tough gunners Private Vasquez and Drake, the outspoken and childish Private Hudson, and the rest. We also meet Bishop, who showcases his precision knife skills on a terrified Hudson. These introductory scenes are a lot of fun. The camaraderie between the characters is evident. A great choice by Cameron to film these scenes last, so that the cast had bonded into a band of brothers and sisters. These Marines are overconfident and arrogant, acting as an allegory for the US in the Vietnam War. Bishop's knife trick damages his hand, revealing that he is an android. This causes Ripley to instantly become cautious around him, which, after our last encounter of an android, is fair enough.
Was it an older model?
Yeah, the Hyperdyne system's 128.2.
Well, that explains it, and the A2s always were a bit twitchy.
We then get a debriefing scene in the hangar where the many egos are at play. Lieutenant Gorman cannot inspire his troops, and Ripley is unable to get through to the Marines just how dangerous the xenomorphs are. Following the debriefing, Ripley proves herself to the Marines by using a power loader with ease. Part of the reason this film still works over 37 years later is its use of practical visual effects. Besides a few janky looking green screens, every effect in the film is practical, causing everything to look realistic and incredible, making the film timeless. Upon descent onto LV-426, Gorman once more catches the eye of the other Marines when he reveals this is only his second combat drop.
Shit. Oh, man.
Touching down, the Marines disembark from the APC and investigate the settlement. At the same time, Ripley, Gorman, Burke and Bishop watch on through the body cams in the APC. Many exterior shots of the colony, named Hadley's Hope, as well as shots of the dropship and the APC, were achieved by combining miniatures and several camera effects. The attention to detail and dedication to the effects from everyone in the visual effects team must be acknowledged, as they're completely seamless in the final film. Upon entering the colony, the tension ramps up considerably. The repetitive beat of the motion trackers alongside the hushed voices of the soldiers builds up the tension expertly. As they walk through damaged corridors, empty rooms and failed barricades, they find no sign of life anywhere. No colonists, no xenomorphs. It sends the imagination of the audience members wild with theories. We feel just as disoriented and tense as the soldiers, making us feel like we're along for the ride. During the investigation, Hicks stumbles upon acid holes in the ground, confirming Ripley's tale of a previous encounter.
Acid for blood.
Believing the area to be secure, much to Ripley's disbelief, Gorman takes the APC team inside Hadley's Hope. Moving further into the colony, the Marines, Burke and Ripley enter the medbay. Inside, Ripley discovers several facehuggers in containment tanks, 2 of which are still alive. Following this discovery, we meet Newt, a little girl who has survived the xenomorph outbreak on her own. Unwilling to speak to the Marines, Ripley charms Newt. Much like their characters, Weaver and Hen developed a special bond during filming. This scene introduces in this cut one of the central themes of the film, motherhood. Ripley immediately develops maternal feelings for Newt, and with the two having lost everything, they quickly bond. Newt, however, is skeptical of the Marines, delivering one of my favourite lines in the film.
These people are here to protect you. They're soldiers.
It won't make any difference.
Using trackers implanted in the colonists, Hudson locates them beneath the fusion-powered atmosphere processing station. Heading to the colonists' location, they descend into the station's depths. Cameron once more slowly builds the terror, as the Marines eventually discover the xenomorph nest. I once again have to give props to the visual effects team. The usage of visual and practical effects in this scene amplify both the terror and dark beauty of the xenomorph. It just again reinforces the timeless quality of this film. Moving further into the nest, the Marines discover an alive colonist cocooned to the wall. Tragically, the Marines don't have time to save her, as while she begs for death, a chestburster, bursts through her chest, giving the Marines no choice but to set them both on fire. For the first hour of the film, Cameron has been purposely conservative with the film's horror. We've been shown nothing but the aftermath of the outbreak and how it affected the colony as a whole as well as the individual. It's a masterclass in building suspension, slowly discovering small pieces of information to keep the audience engaged while also building anticipation for the eventual xenomorph appearance. And the payoff is worth it. Cameron took inspiration from ant colonies for the xenomorph nest, and it's a great fit into the established lore from the original. Adrian Biddle's cinematography for the creature amplifies their creepiness. He films them with incredibly tight close-ups, making it hard to distinguish where their bodies begin and end. This means that it's hard for both the Marines and the audience to spot them until it's too late. From here, it's clear that these battle-hardened, experienced Marines are outmatched. It's a horrifying scene. Numerous Marines are wiped out by the creatures, including Apone and Drake. As stated previously, Cameron wanted to include a Vietnam War allegory into the film, and it's evident here. The technologically superior and confident Marines have become overrun by what they see as an inferior enemy. With the chain of command lost instantly, Ripley steps in over the horrified Gorman and drives the tumbler into the nest to rescue the remaining Marines. As they try to leave, a xenomorph attempts to break in. Using his shotgun, Hicks shoots it in the mouth, causing its acid blood to spray inside the vehicle, hitting Hudson's left arm. In both the original film and the sequel, we see that acid blood can eat its way through many layers of metal. With that in mind, how Hudson can use his arm for the rest of the film is baffling. Managing to escape the nest, the team reacts to their defeat and scrambles to find a solution. To Burke's frustration, Hicks and Ripley decide the best course of action is to escape back to Sulaco and nuke the colony from orbit.
This installation has a substantial dollar value attached to it.
They can bill me.
This plan might have worked if it wasn't for the xenomorphs getting to the dropship first. This shot of the exploding dropship was achieved by filming the miniature explosion and then using a rear projection screen behind the actors, allowing them to react convincingly. With no immediate option of escape, the characters reacted to a hopeless situation, resulting in another classic line.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Barricading themselves inside the colony, the remaining survivors including Hicks, Ripley, Newt, Bishop, Burke, Gorman, Hudson and Vasquez assess the situation. Realizing that it will take 17 days until rescue, many view the situation as hopeless. Ripley once more takes charge, rallying the group into sealing the access points the creatures have been using up until now. Impressed by her resourcefulness and intelligence, Hicks gives Ripley a tracking beacon.
Thanks.
Doesn't mean we're engaged or anything. Alright, what's next?
Hicks and Ripley's relationship has been fantastically woven into the film's narrative, in particular by how Cameron telegraphs their bonding through the film's blocking, meaning by where the actors stand and move in the shot. In the film's opening hour, before we know which Marine will live or die, Hicks is regularly seen to be in the same shot as Ripley, subtly informing the audience of their bond before it even forms. The next scene reinforces Ripley and Newt's mother and daughter type relationship. Ripley even gives Newt the Apple Watch tracker, comforting her by saying she will always know where Newt is. It's a really touching and sweet scene, underpinning that both these characters, aside from battling their own trauma, finally have someone to fight for. Ripley and the group then begin to theorize about the xenomorph. Ripley concludes that another creature must lay the facehugger eggs, something that we haven't seen yet. When telling Bishop to destroy the facehugger specimens once he's finished with them, Bishop informs her that Burke gave the order that they must be preserved to be taken back to the company labs. In the ensuing confrontation, Burke tries to bargain with Ripley, claiming that the facehugger specimens will be worth millions, setting them up for life. Ripley also discovers that it was Burke who gave the order for the colonists to investigate the derelict ship, meaning that Burke has caused the death of the colonists.
I made a decision and it was wrong. It was a bad call, Ripley. It was a bad call.
Bad call.
Right.
These people are dead, Burke!
Before she can expose his plan, Bishop reveals that the dropship explosion damaged the fusion station, which will cause the colony to blow up in 4 hours. With no time to lose, Bishop volunteers to travel to the colony's satellite. From there, he can remotely pilot the other dropship still in the Sulaco to rescue them. And with Bishop off to the satellite in what can only be described as an unflattering shot, Ripley continues to bond with Hicks over a rifle lesson. Satisfyingly proficient with Hicks's gun, Ripley returns to Newt to comfort her. This comfort is short-lived, as Ripley sees that the facehugger specimens have been released inside the room. With the doors locked, the glass chair-proof, and with Burke shutting off the cameras in the room, Ripley and Newt are on their own. Unlike the original film, Cameron needed the facehuggers to physically move around. This proved to be a difficult challenge for the effects team. The solution was to use a control wire along the floor that activated a gear inside the facehugger, causing the appendages to move as it was pulled along. Other clever tricks were used, such as reversing footage and combining quick shots into one to make it look like the facehuggers are jumping. The effects work great, and are fully believable. Using her lidar to activate the sprinklers, Ripley gets the attention of the rest of the team, who manage to save her and Newt. I've always loved how Newt immediately calls for Hudson to help. I like to believe that his childish behaviour caused the two to bond off screen. The facehuggers destroyed, Ripley comes to the accurate conclusion that Burke released the facehuggers into the room. His plan being that once the facehuggers laid their embryos into Ripley and Newt, Burke and the team would escape, whereby they would go into stasis on their return. Burke would then sabotage the other crew's pods, and he could smuggle the embryos through Earth's customs using Ripley and Newt as incubators. Before the crew can decide what to do with Burke, the xenomorphs return, entering through the one access point they overlooked. That is by far my favourite shot of the film. It's creepy and spine-tingling, reminding me personally of wasps moving in a hive. In the ensuing firefight, Burke is killed, Hudson is captured, Vasquez and Gorman sacrifice themselves when cornered, and Hicks is injured. Newt also manages to get separated from Hicks and Ripley down the chute. Trapped in the sewer, Ripley and Hicks are unable to reach Newt in time before Xenomorph captures her in another great shot. Now on the second dropship, Ripley refuses to leave Newt behind. With the injured Hicks and Bishop staying on the ship, Ripley arms herself with a makeshift flamethrower and pulse rifle combo heading back into the Xenomorph nest. The final act of Aliens is a fantastic payoff not only to Aliens but also Alien. Ripley confronting her trauma from the previous film in order to save someone she's grown to care about in this film is brilliant and makes the ending to Aliens feel earned. It's absolutely badass watching Ripley using all of her experience with the Xenomorphs to her advantage. None of their tactics will work on her, and you can tell from Weaver's performance that Ripley will mow through all of the Xenomorphs if that's what it will take to save Newt. I also love how the audio in this scene is entirely diegetic, ramping up the tension. Using the tracker that Ripley gave Newt, she quickly finds it. As Ripley carries Newt to the exploding station, they stumble upon the film's big reveal: the Xenomorph Queen and her eggs. It's a grand reveal, adding to the established lore of the original without sacrificing the mystery or horror. The Queen itself is an imposing design, in no small part due to the whole thing being completely practical. No digital or post-production effects were used on the Queen. Everything you see of her in the film is in camera. Without any dialogue, Ripley and the Queen converse through their actions. Ripley threatens to destroy the nest with her flamethrower if she's attacked. The Queen initially relents, allowing Ripley to leave. Before leaving, however, the Queen opens an egg, presumably through pheromone communication or a hive consciousness. Regardless, seeing this causes Ripley to set the hive on fire. Angered, the Queen gives chase to a fleeing Ripley and Newt. Just before the Queen can reach them, Ripley and Newt manage to board the dropship, escaping the station just before it explodes. Back on the Sulaco, Ripley thanks Bishop in a touching moment. Breaking Bishop in half, Ripley draws the creature's attention while Newt runs and hides. Ripley then manages to barricade herself from the Queen, causing the Queen to hunt down Newt. With Newt pinned by the Queen, Ripley returns in the power loader, delivering a line that allows aliens to pass the Bechdel test.
Get away from her, you bitch!
After an epic confrontation, Ripley defeats the Queen.
Hey, look at Randy Orton slithering.
Oh, watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out! KO! Here's the cover!
Ejecting the creature into space in a nice callback to the original film. The battle over, the film finishes with Ripley no longer alone, as she sleeps in the stasis pod alongside Hicks, Bishop and Newt on the journey home.
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
In 1991, the Aliens Special Collector's Edition was released to the public on Laserdisc. For this edition, James Cameron oversaw the creation of a new cut for Aliens. This film cut included several scenes not included in the theatrical, extending the runtime to just over 2.5 hours. This additional cut is included in every home video release of Aliens, allowing audiences to watch either the theatrical or the special edition of the film. Cameron claims that the special edition is his preferred version of the film, stating that this is the film that was initially intended for audiences back in 1986. Back in post-production, Fox stressed they wanted the film to be 2 hours maximum, allowing for more sessions per day in theatres. This caused several scenes to be removed, including scenes integral to Ripley's development. Much to Weaver's anger, Cameron stood his ground at the final cut, stating that cutting more would make the film nonsensical. Fox relented, resulting in the theatrical cut. Some key additions to the special edition include a scene that adds to Ripley's grief, as Burke informs Ripley of her daughter's death at age 66. Avid fans of the Alien franchise will know that we get to play as Ripley's daughter in the 2014 game Alien Isolation. In that game, Amanda Ripley is determined to find information on her missing mother. I don't know if she ever did though, As my Amanda Ripley will forever be hiding in the locker after encountering a xenomorph for the first time. Other key additions include the inciting incident for the xenomorph outbreak. We see Hadley's Hope in full operation, revealing that it was Newt's parents who were the ones told to investigate the derelict ship, beginning the outbreak. We see that the Marines installed robot sentry guns on the perimeter while locking down the access points. The discussion surrounding the alien queen is extended, with Hudson comparing the xenomorph hive to an ant hive. There are numerous other additions, but you get the gist. As with any release of another version of a film, discussion inevitably arrives as to which is better. The theatrical cut is leaner, faster, and therefore more intense. At the same time, the special edition extends scenes while adding key scenes that add depth to Ripley and other supporting characters. There's a good case for both sides. I personally prefer special editions, as I enjoy the characters in Cameron's film, and I'd rather see a further exploration of their characters over near-perfect pacing. If you enjoyed the theatrical, watch the special edition and witness the inclusions that will add more weight to the emotional experience. Aliens was released to universal critical, public and commercial acclaim. The film dominated the box office in 1986, making it the third highest grossing film of that year. Sigourney Weaver's performance was praised in particular, even earning a nomination for Best Actress at the 1987 Academy Awards, the first ever Best Actress nomination for a science fiction film. Aliens won 2 awards at the Academy, Best Sound Effects Editing and Best Visual Effects. For all the obstacles Aliens had to endure throughout its creation, the film achieves what many sequels cannot. Not only does it ramp up the action and terror successfully, but it also does so without sacrificing the core story of a woman confronting her trauma through maternity. It's an impressive film that has left a lasting legacy for sci-fi action. The same could not be said for the following film, but that's a story for another video. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, there are many more like this one on my channel, such as the original Alien or the 1989 Batman film. Thank you everyone and stay safe.